What is up, guys? This video is going to be pretty short. All we're going to do is we're going to organize our game scene a little bit better in the function area. So to do that, we're going to create three new functions. They're going to be start, game over, and restart. We're just going to create the framework for implementing these functions later. So I'm just going to mark a spot in our game scene file. I'm going to call this just the game section. And I'm going to say func starts, func game over, and func restarts. So this is just going to define what's happening a little better just for you and for me and any programmer that looks at the code. So instead of having kind of this tapped function that calls all the methods, it's a lot more defined if instead you can just say start in here. So like when the user taps on the screen, it's going to call the start function, which is going to call all of this stuff. And really quick for all of these things, we can just call these actions. So like the tapped, right swipe, down swipe, it's all kind of an action that the user can do. So let's mark that with actions. And just to remind you guys why we're doing this mark here, if you go up here, you can kind of see this hierarchy of different things that we're in. If you click here, basically it just organizes all of these functions so you can easily see kind of different categories of functions. So now let's also really quick, let's just mark our loading section. And awesome. So we're going to create a couple of variables as well at the top of our game scene file. It's going to be is started and is game over. So this is going to tell let this game scene object know whether the game has started or whether it's over to define what kind of behavior happens when you tap, swipe, etc. So we're going to say var is started. This is going to be, we actually don't have to define the type here because we're just going to set this equal to false to start because we know that when the game scene is created, the game has not started yet. And we can do the same thing for is game over. We can just set that equal to false. So now when we go into our tapped method, this does a few different things. So if the game isn't started and the game isn't over, we want the tapped action to start the game. If the game is started and the game still isn't over, we want the hero to jump because that's what happens when the game has started. And if the game is over and the game has been started, we want that to call the restart function. So it will restart everything back to its original place. And that's probably a lot to kind of a few different options there. Let's just define it to make it make more sense. So we're going to say if the game is not started and the game is not over, what we want to do is we want to just start this game, plain and simple. Then we're going to say else if the game is started and the game still isn't over, we want to make the hero jump. And last but not least, we can just say else here instead of the else if because we know that if it's not one of those two options, it's going to be this last one. We're just going to call the restart function. So in the restart and game over functions, let's just do print restarts, print game over, just for now until we actually implement them. So we have hero.run, generator.start generating obstacles. Let's make the ground start moving as well. So we're going to say ground.start. So now if we run this is going to be pretty cool. So now we have a little bit more complex behavior with the actions. The actions now do different things depending on the conditions of the game. Oh, actually there's one thing we definitely need to remember to do is in the start function, we need to say is started equals true. And game over, we have to say is game over equals true. Otherwise, none of these other actions are going to end up getting called. So let's try running this now. So now if we tap, it looks like it starts our ground, starts the hero running, awesome. And it looks like it's also starting the generation of our walls when we actually implement that. Now if we tap again, it looks like our hero jumps, which is perfect. And since we haven't actually implemented a way for the game to end, we aren't going to get this restart function called just yet. But awesome, that's cool. I just wanted to get all that organized really quick. And in the next video, we'll actually start implementing the walls generating and moving across our screen.